McLaren's 2026 car was set to change everything until the FIA banned it overnight. It wasn't illegal until it started working too well. That's when the rulebook changed. Their secret weapon? A floor so advanced, even Mercedes helped build it, and now it's banned before the season begins. Subscribe now, because what we just uncovered could rewrite the entire 2026 championship, and most fans won't realize it until it's too late. Just weeks before the new season kicks off, McLaren received a crushing blow from the FIA, a formal notification that their 2026 car concept has been prohibited from competition. This isn't just about a part or a minor tweak. The entire aerodynamic foundation of the MCL38 has been ruled illegal. The floor, the structure that governs how the car breathes through the air, has been classified as non-compliant under revised interpretations of Article 3.7.2c. The decision didn't come after a protest or a race, it came during final pre-homologation evaluations. Quiet, sharp, devastating. What triggered the FIA's ruling wasn't a smoking gun, but something more powerful: data that couldn't be ignored. During routine aero simulations and compliance scans, McLaren's floor showed repeatable deformation under dynamic load. Not in a traditional sense. There were no moving parts, no servos, no electronics. Instead, it was the material itself doing the work, engineered to react passively under very specific frequencies generated by the engine's combustion cycles. In short, the floor flexed not because it was soft, but because it was smart. McLaren's innovation relied on a layered composite material developed in coordination with Mercedes' high-performance powertrains. The concept? Use the natural torque pulses of the internal combustion engine to trigger microscopic structural responses. These pulses aligned with aerodynamic pressure zones, reshaping diffuser geometry under cornering and throttle load. It was all passive, all mechanical, and terrifyingly effective. The result was extra downforce in corners without sacrificing drag on the straights. In modern F1, that's a silver bullet. But it also drew attention. The FIA responded with a term never previously formalized: dynamic structural compliance. In their words, any surface that shifts shape under load, even passively, can now be considered a breach of aerodynamic stability regulations. It's a seismic shift in interpretation. Under the old understanding, McLaren's floor may have been legal. But now, the bar has moved. The FIA insists this is a clarification, not a new rule. But the timing, just as final construction begins, raises serious questions. McLaren invested months and millions into this floor. Now, it's worthless. What makes this more controversial is that McLaren submitted early concept data as far back as Q2 2025. Nothing was flagged. Preliminary structural tests were passed. Wind tunnel validation was accepted. Only now, with production nearly locked and the car fully built around the floor's behavior, has the FIA stepped in to shut it down. That's not regulation. That's interpretation, and it arrived too late for McLaren to pivot without pain. This isn't just a setback. It's a strategic hit at the heart of their season. Other teams were experimenting with similar ideas. Alpine, Aston Martin, even Williams were rumored to be exploring passive aero structures. But none matched McLaren's level of integration. Their system wasn't an add-on. It was central to how the car managed balance, pitch sensitivity, and tire load. Without it, the entire aero map collapses. That means new CFD baselines, new suspension kinematics, and a revised cooling profile, all with under 2 months before the first on-track appearance. It's not a ban of a concept. It's a reset of an entire engineering cycle. And here lies the core controversy. McLaren did what great teams are meant to do: push the boundary of what's possible. They didn't hide their system. They engineered it openly, through the tools available. But now, because it worked too well, because it showed measurable gains no one could match, it's being erased. In a sport that claims to reward genius, McLaren has learned the hard way: some ideas are only legal until they threaten the status quo. What most fans don't realize is that this entire controversy began not with a protest from another team, but during an internal FIA simulation audit. As part of the 2026 regulatory preparation, teams submitted their full-scale aerodynamic response models under simulated G-force loads. When McLaren's data came across the desk, engineers noticed a subtle but consistent pattern. The car's aerodynamic center of pressure was shifting under torque application, not by driver input, not by active systems, but simply by how the car was built. The data didn't show movement. It showed behavior. The component at the center of it all? A multi-phase composite floor, engineered with a unique internal architecture that responds to high-frequency torsional stress. That stress, generated naturally by the Mercedes combustion engine, was enough to create micro-deformations in key areas of the floor structure. These weren't flexing wings or rubbery edges. They were precisely calculated stress points that allowed airflow to be redirected at high load, increasing diffuser efficiency and rear grip without triggering any active control systems. In short, it was a silent aero weapon, and it passed every traditional legality test until now. This material wasn't pulled from a shelf. It was the result of a year-long collaboration between McLaren and advanced materials specialists inside Mercedes' power unit division. The aim was to translate engine harmonics, those tiny vibration signatures that most teams try to cancel, into functional aero behavior. The final design used a staggered lamination method, aligning the inner material grain to specific frequency bands produced by throttle load between 40 and 65%. That's where cornering stress and torque met. That's where the floor came alive. The gains weren't theoretical. On their dynamic test rig, McLaren recorded up to 10% increase in local downforce without any drag penalty. In medium-speed corners, the kind that define race pace over a full stint, that equated to a net advantage of nearly 0.3 per lap. But more than just speed, it gave stability. The car became more predictable under variable load. Tire degradation improved. Balance shifted forward, helping rotation without compromising traction. The floor didn't just make the car faster, it made it easier to drive. And in the high-stakes chaos of 2026 development, that kind of advantage is pure gold. The FIA's challenge wasn't proving that the floor was illegal, it was deciding what illegal meant in this context. Their regulations didn't specifically ban passive material response. There was no clause against vibration-induced performance shifts. But what frightened the Technical Advisory Committee was the intent. The system didn't just tolerate structural behavior, it weaponized it. And that, according to internal notes, constituted a material-activated aerodynamic response, now interpreted as a breach of Article 3.7.2c. It wasn't about motion. It was about intelligence, and the rules weren't written for that. Worryingly for the rest of the field, this interpretation opens a much broader concern. If the FIA is now willing to ban passive design strategies based on performance outcome, then every team using layered composites, memory-reactive floor panels, or stress-tuned under-tray ribs is in danger. Engineers must now consider not just whether something moves, but whether it changes effectiveness under race conditions, even if it never breaks, bends, or shifts visibly. The legality line just became philosophical. McLaren was the first casualty, but they may not be the last. And perhaps the most painful twist for McLaren is this: they followed the process. They submitted every update. They passed structural checks. They disclosed material behavior. They never hid what they were building. But the moment that behavior turned into a measurable on-track advantage, one the FIA hadn't anticipated, everything changed. The ban wasn't triggered by rule breaking. It was triggered by success. And in a sport that claims to reward innovation, that may be the harshest penalty of all. McLaren didn't just lose a part, they lost the trust that the system rewards vision. This floor was more than carbon and resin. It was the product of belief that Formula One still had space for genius, for boundary pushing, for elegant solutions. But when the FIA shut it down, they weren't just banning a design. They were rewriting the limits of what teams are allowed to imagine. This moment changes how every technical director will think moving forward. It sends a chilling message across the paddock: if your idea succeeds too well, if it catches the FIA off guard, it might not be praised. It might be erased. The lesson isn't just about what is legal. It's about how safe it is to innovate when the rules can be reinterpreted in real time. That's not sport. That's suppression. McLaren's engineers, who spent thousands of hours building something within the boundaries of the regulations, now find themselves watching that work disappear. And not because they broke the law, but because they revealed how fragile that law is when challenged. There's no satisfaction in being too clever for the rulebook if the rulebook responds by moving the goalposts after the fact. For fans who remember the sport's great innovations, the Brabham fan car, bronze double diffuser, Red Bull's blown exhaust, this has the same bitter taste. Those moments of brilliance, so rare and so bold, always walk the edge of legality. But the difference now is that the edge moves. It moves not because of fairness, but because of fear of imbalance, fear of dominance, fear of change. And what hurts most is that McLaren did not hide. They submitted every document, passed every test. They didn't smuggle a performance gain through deceit, they engineered it into plain sight. Their only mistake was thinking Formula One would celebrate the breakthrough instead of punishing it. In their eyes, this wasn't a trick. It was art. But now that art is banned, the emotional weight inside Woking cannot be overstated. A year of work, design, simulation, validation has been reduced to a footnote in the technical directive archive. And the worst part? There's no recourse. No formal appeal. Just silence. A design erased without penalty points or disqualification, but with a far more lasting consequence, the memory that the system turned its back the moment brilliance became uncomfortable. So as 2026 begins to take shape, McLaren stands at a crossroads. Do they retreat to safe, conservative design? Or do they find another way forward, one that plays the same game, but with a new understanding of the rules? Because this wasn't just a ruling. It was a warning. And every team now hears it clearly: innovation in Formula One isn't just about speed. It's about knowing exactly how far you can go before someone decides you've gone too far.